Amelia Johnson sat by the small window of their family house, watching cars rush past. For 23 years, she had lived on Benson Street, a quiet neighborhood in Lagos where almost everyone knew each other. Old zinc roofs, narrow streets, the smell of beans and fried plantain floating from neighbors' kitchens every evening. A place where dreams stayed small. Her father, Mr. Johnson, worked as a secondary school teacher. Her mother, Mrs. Johnson, sold foodstuff in the market: rice, beans, Gary. They had managed to send Amelia and her younger brother, Michael, to school. It was not easy. There were days her mother had to sell her gold earrings just to pay their WEC fees. But they were a close, loving family. Always smiling, always praying together. Still, for Amelia, love and happiness were not enough. She wanted more. She wanted to break free from the small streets, the old buses, the leaking roofs. She wanted what she saw on Instagram. Girls flying business class. Girls wearing bone-straight wigs and Gucci bags. Girls living in Lekki, driving white Mercedes-Benz. Girls marrying young, rich men who took them to Dubai for honeymoon. It burned in her chest every time she scrolled. Why not me, she always thought. After finishing her mass communication degree from the University of Lagos, she managed to get a job as a receptionist in a small real estate company. The pay was poor, 45,000 Nigerian nairas monthly. Enough to buy data, small wigs, and makeup, but not enough to change her life. At work, 3 different men asked her out. Nice, gentle men, 2 of them engineers, 1 a banker. But they were all regular guys, hustling like her. They couldn't afford trips abroad or flashy cars. Her mother always told her, "Amelia, don't marry because of money. A kind man with a small salary is better than a wicked man with millions." But Amelia would smile and say, "Mummy, times have changed. Money is love too." She wanted a rich husband, plain and simple. Then one evening, as she sat in bed scrolling through Instagram, she saw a message request from Daniel Smith. His profile was clean and sharp. Well-fitted suits. Business meetings in glass offices. Trips to London, Dubai, South Africa. Pictures beside a black Range Rover and white mansion. Over 20,000 followers, no sign of fake life. Hi beautiful. I hope I'm not disturbing you. I just came across your page. You are stunning. I run a few companies here in Abuja. I'll be in Lagos soon. Maybe we can meet. Her heart raced. This was exactly the man she had prayed for. Tall, handsome, rich. And he noticed her. She smiled and replied. Days turned to weeks. Daniel called her every morning before work and every night before she slept. He sent her airtime. He ordered food to her office. He told her about his businesses, how he owned a logistics company, a construction firm, and was building 8G an estate in Abuja. He even sent her 200,000 Nigerian nairas one Friday. For you to do your nails and buy yourself something nice, he said. Her friends in the office were jealous. Babe, this your man NA jackpot oh, they teased. Her parents grew worried. Amelia, this man you're always talking to, who is he? Her father asked. His name is Daniel Smith. He's a businessman from Abuja. He's serious about me, Daddy. Her mother frowned. You just met him online, Amelia. Don't be quick to trust. But Amelia waved them off. He's different. He's not like those small boys in Lagos. He has vision. Finally, after 2 months of daily chats and video calls, Daniel came to Lagos. He picked her up in a black Lexus SUV, dressed in a clean white kaftan, with a sweet cologne she couldn't forget. They spent 5 days together. He took her to the Palms shopping mall, to Radisson Blu for lunch, and even introduced her to two of his business partners, clean, sharp-looking men who called him chairman. He didn't touch her. He was respectful, gentle. He told her about his late parents, his struggles, and how he built himself from the ground. "I want you beside me, Amelia," he told her one night as they sat at a quiet lounge. "I'm tired of fake girls who only want money. You have sense. You have class. Come to Abuja with me. Meet my people. Let's plan our future." She blushed. It was moving too fast, but it felt right. Her mother begged her not to rush. "Spend more time here. Know him better. Don't go to Abuja yet." But Amelia had made up her mind. "I trust him, Mum. Don't worry. I'll be fine." A week later, she packed her bag again. Daniel sent her a first-class flight ticket to Abuja. He even sent extra money to buy a new gown and shoes. As she boarded the plane, Amelia smiled to herself. She was finally leaving Benson Street behind. She was about to enter the world she had always dreamed of. If only she knew. The airplane wheels touched down smoothly at Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja. Amelia's heart raced with excitement. This was the first time she had ever left Lagos. First time on a plane. First time stepping into the federal capital city. From the plane window, she saw clean, wide roads, big glass buildings, and cars that sparkled in the sun. This was not Benson Street. This was the life she wanted. When she walked out of the arrival gate, Daniel was waiting. Tall, sharp, smiling, dressed in a navy blue suit that hugged his broad shoulders. He waved at her with both hands like an excited child. "My queen. Welcome home," he said, pulling her into a warm hug. He carried her small box effortlessly and led her to his black Lexus SUV, parked right in front of the terminal. The car shone as if it had been freshly washed that morning. The leather seats smelled of expensive perfume. Soft jazz music played from the speakers. As they drove through Abuja, Amelia could not stop staring. The roads were smooth, no potholes like Lagos. Beautiful estates everywhere. Tall palm trees lined the streets. Big malls, fancy restaurants, and people driving sleek cars. Daniel smiled as he watched her excitement. "I told you, baby. Abuja is where you belong. Lagos is too small for a queen like you." He took her straight to his house. When the security man rolled open the black gate, Amelia gasped. A two-story mansion stood tall before her, painted cream and white, with glass balconies, flower gardens, and a black Range Rover parked outside. The compound was paved with interlocking tiles, neat and clean. "Daniel, is this all yours?" she asked, eyes wide. He chuckled. "Yes, my father left me land and I developed it. Hard work, my dear. Nothing is impossible." Inside, the house was even more beautiful. White marble floors. Grey velvet sofas. Gold-plated wall clocks. The kitchen had a double-door fridge, sparkling clean. Her jaw nearly dropped when she saw the master bedroom. A king-sized bed, chandelier lights, and a walk-in wardrobe full of designer clothes and shoes. Daniel showed her to a guest room equally beautiful and told her to rest. "I have a meeting later today, but tomorrow, I'll take you to meet my people," he said, smiling softly. For the next 3 days, Amelia lived like a queen. Daniel bought her dresses, perfumes, and wigs. They ate at the best restaurants, Transcorp Hilton, Jabi Lake Mall, Nkoyo. He introduced her to more of his business partners, men who respected him deeply. They called him Ogre and Boss Man. Each night, they sat on the balcony drinking wine and sharing stories. Daniel always looked serious, calm, and wise. "I know you're scared, Amelia," he said one night as they watched the stars. "But trust me. My people will love you. I'm not playing with your heart. I'm ready to settle down. You're the woman I've been waiting for." By the fourth day, he said the words she had been waiting to hear. "Pack your things, baby. Let's travel to see my people in Kogi State. It's just a few hours' drive from here. You will meet my uncles and aunties. I want them to see the woman I want to marry." Amelia smiled so hard her cheeks hurt. This was it. Her dreams were finally real. She called her mother that night. "Mummy, I'm traveling with Daniel to see his family tomorrow. Don't worry. I'll call you when I get there." Her mother's voice was soft and worried. "Okay, Amelia. Be careful. And don't forget your family loves you." The next morning, Daniel packed her bag and loaded it into his SUV. He wore a dark shirt and sunglasses. His voice was calm and sweet as always. "Ready, my queen?" "Yes," she smiled, getting into the front seat. As they drove out of Abuja and entered the long, lonely highway, Amelia didn't know that she had just crossed the point of no return. The journey to hell had quietly begun. The sun was bright when Daniel's black SUV rolled out of Abuja and onto the long highway. Amelia sat quietly beside him, humming softly to the music playing on the radio. The sky was blue. The trees on both sides of the road stretched far and wide. At first, it felt like a peaceful road trip. Daniel drove smoothly. From time to time, he glanced at her and smiled. "You're quiet today, baby." "I'm just thinking about how lucky I am," she said, grinning shyly. "You're taking me to meet your people. I'm happy." He reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. "You deserve it, Amelia. You've suffered enough in Lagos. Now you'll see real family." They stopped at a small roadside restaurant to eat. Roasted fish, fried yam, fresh palm wine. Daniel paid for everything, joking with the food seller like he had known her for years. After eating, they continued the journey. But after about 4 hours, Amelia began to notice something strange. The road was still stretching ahead. Still the same red earth, tall trees, and no sign of any town. No villages. No filling stations. No street signs. Even the network on her phone disappeared. She cleared her throat softly. "Daniel, I thought you said Kogi was not far?" He smiled but kept his eyes on the road. Yes. We're almost there. My people live in the deep part of the town, close to the hills. That's why it looks lonely." An hour passed. 2 hours passed. The sun started going down. Darkness crept over the sky. Amelia's chest tightened slowly. "Daniel, please, are we lost?" she asked, her voice thin. He didn't answer immediately. His face looked hard now, no more soft smile. His fingers gripped the steering wheel tightly. Finally, he said in a deep, flat voice. "No, Amelia. We're not lost. We're almost home. Just be patient." When she tried to check her phone again, the screen showed no service. Her stomach turned. By the time night fully fell, Daniel turned off the main highway and drove into a narrow bush path. Thick forest on both sides. No streetlights. No other cars. "Daniel, where are we?" she asked, her voice shaking now. He didn't answer. He just pressed harder on the accelerator, driving faster through the dark bush path. Fear rose slowly in Amelia's throat. She looked at him, his face was stiff and serious now, not the Daniel she knew. After another 30 minutes, the car suddenly stopped in front of a small, abandoned house. A mud house with rusted iron roof, sitting alone in the middle of nowhere. Daniel came down from the car silently. He walked over, opened her door, and said quietly, "Come down." Her legs shook. "Daniel, I don't understand. Where are we?" He didn't answer. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black pistol. He pointed it straight at her chest. "I said, come down." Her mouth fell open. Her heart slammed hard in her chest. She raised her hands slowly and stepped out of the car. "Walk," Daniel ordered, waving the gun towards the house. Tears spilled from her eyes. Her lips trembled. "Daniel, please, what did I do? Where are we? Please, talk to me." He shoved her forward roughly. "Shut up and walk." Inside the house, it was empty, dusty floor, broken windows, a mat in one corner, an old iron bucket in another. Daniel locked the door behind them, threw her bag into the corner, and pulled out a thick chain with a padlock from a black nylon. Before she could scream, he grabbed her wrist and chained her right ankle to a heavy metal bar fixed on the wall. She cried out, "Daniel! Why? What is happening?" He crouched in front of her, gun still in hand, and spoke slowly. "You'll stay here. Your father will get a message soon. If they want you back alive, they'll pay. If not, well..." He stood up, stuffed a cloth into her mouth to stop her from screaming, and walked out. The iron door slammed shut. The heavy padlock clicked. Amelia was alone, chained. No phone. No light. No hope. Her tears soaked her face. Her chest rose and fell fast. Her dreams, her hopes, everything shattered. This was not love. This was a nightmare. It was 6:45 a.m. in Lagos. Mr. Johnson sat at the dining table, slowly stirring his cup of tea. His eyes looked tired. His wife, Mrs. Evelyn Johnson, was standing by the kitchen door, wiping her hands on her wrapper. "Is Amelia still not picking your calls?" Evelyn asked, her eyebrows tight with worry. He shook his head slowly. "I've called her number 10 times this morning. Switched off." He picked up his phone and tried again. Still no service. Evelyn walked over and sat beside him. Her lips trembled. "Maybe she's still on the road with Daniel. You know these village places don't have strong network." Mr. Johnson sighed and nodded. He tried to stay calm. But deep inside him, a dark cloud had started to form. A father knows. A father feels when something is wrong with his child. As they sat in silence, there was a loud knock at the gate. Bang! 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 Their security man, Musa, rushed in. "Oga, madam, postman day gate. He say NA urgent letter." Mr. Johnson stood up quickly. He and Evelyn rushed to the gate. A young postman handed them a brown envelope. There was no stamp. No sender name. Just one word written boldly on it. Johnson. Mr. Johnson's heart pounded hard. He tore open the envelope with shaky hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed clearly. Short. Sharp. "Mr. Johnson. We have your daughter Amelia. If you want her back alive, pay 25 Nigerian nairas million naira. Do not go to the police. Do not try to trace this message. You have 7 days. We will call you soon. If you disobey, you will bury your daughter." The paper slipped from Mr. Johnson's hand. Evelyn gasped sharply and grabbed the letter. Her knees buckled. She screamed and collapsed to the ground, her wrapper flying as she cried. "My daughter, my only daughter, they've taken my child." Tears streamed down Mr. Johnson's dark face. He bent down, picked up his wife, and carried her into the house. His mind raced. His chest felt like a stone had been placed on it. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. His hands trembled. 25 million Nigerian nairas? Where would he get that kind of money in 7 days? His phone buzzed loudly. Unknown number. He picked the call quickly. A cold, rough voice spoke immediately. "Mr. Johnson. I hope you saw our letter." "Yes, yes, please, please don't hurt my daughter," Mr. Johnson cried out. The voice growled. "Shut up and listen. You have 7 days. Start looking for the money. We'll call back with account details. One wrong move, You will lose her forever." The line went dead. Mr. Johnson sank to the floor and buried his face in his hands. His shoulders shook. His tears fell freely. Evelyn crawled to him and grabbed his shirt. "Please, Johnson, do something. We can't lose Amelia. I carried that girl for 9 months. She's my only child." He hugged his wife tightly. His voice cracked as he whispered, "I will get her back, even if I have to sell everything I own." Meanwhile, far away in that lonely house, deep in the bush, Amelia sat on the cold floor, her back against the rough wall, her leg chained tightly. Her lips were dry. Her eyes were swollen from crying. The door creaked open. Daniel walked in slowly, holding a plate of cold rice and a bottle of water. He dropped the food on the floor without a word. Amelia looked up at him with tired, red eyes. "Why, Daniel? Why me?" He stared at her for a long moment. His face was hard. His jaw clenched. But deep inside his eyes, something flickered. Regret? Or guilt? He didn't answer. He turned and walked out, locking the door again. As the lock clicked, Amelia swallowed hard and whispered under her breath, "Daddy, Mummy, please, find me." Mr. Johnson paced the living room like a trapped lion. His eyes were bloodshot, his shirt wrinkled, and his phone clutched tightly in his fist. For 3 days, neither he nor Evelyn had slept properly. The ransom deadline was fast approaching, only 4 days left. Evelyn sat on the couch, twisting her scarf around her fingers, whispering prayers under her breath. Their home in Surulere, Lagos, once filled with laughter, now felt like a graveyard. Suddenly, Mr. Johnson's phone rang. He grabbed it quickly. "Hello." It was his younger brother, Uncle Peter. "Brother, I've spoken to a few people. I can borrow 8 million Nigerian nairas for now. Maybe we can sell the old land in Ikorodu to get more." Mr. Johnson's throat tightened. He exhaled deeply. "Thank you, Peter. Thank you. I will call the buyer today." Every second mattered. He could not lose his daughter. Meanwhile, Abuja, Daniel's hideout. Amelia sat quietly in the dark room. Her mind drifted painfully to the day she left Lagos. She had been so full of excitement then. Daniel had called her, his voice smooth and warm. "Amelia, come and visit me in Abuja. Let me show you around. I'll take care of everything." He booked her flight. He even promised to introduce her to his family. She trusted him. After all, they had spent days together before. He had always been sweet, funny, gentle. But once she landed in Abuja, everything changed. He didn't take her to any family. Instead, he brought her straight to this abandoned house on the outskirts of town. The door slammed. The lock clicked. The chain tightened around her ankle. And Daniel. His eyes grew colder. His smiles disappeared. Now, she barely recognized him. Daniel stood outside the small house, leaning against an old tree. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was Vincent, his gang leader. He answered quickly. "Daniel, have they started gathering the money?" Vincent's deep voice crackled through the line. "Yes," Daniel replied sharply. "The father is moving fast." "Good. Stay sharp. No soft feelings. You know the rules. If they fail, we clean up everything, girl included. Understand?" Daniel swallowed hard. His jaw flexed. "I understand." As Vincent ended the call, Daniel remained frozen. He stared at the dusty road ahead of him. His heart pounded. He had done kidnappings before. Quick, clean, money made. But Amelia. She wasn't like the others. He remembered her laugh. The way she played with her braided hair. The way her eyes shone when she told him about her dreams of starting her own fashion brand. For the first time in his criminal life, Regret burned deep in his chest. Lagos, Johnson residence. The sun was setting behind the rooftops of Surulere. Mr. Johnson sat with Uncle Peter, both counting cash bundles on the table. They had managed to gather 18 million Nigerian nairas so far. Evelyn walked in slowly, holding Amelia's framed childhood photo close to her chest. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered, "Johnson, are we sure she's still alive? What if they've already?" "Don't say that," Mr. Johnson snapped, slamming his hand on the table. His voice cracked with pain. "She's alive. My Amelia is alive. And I will bring her home." As if on cue, his phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He picked up immediately. "Mr. Johnson," Daniel's cold voice echoed. "You have 2 days left. I hope for your sake you're serious. I have 18 million Nigerian nairas. Please, please, let me hear my daughter's voice. Let me know she's alive." There was a long pause. Finally, Daniel spoke quietly, his voice flat. "Wait." A few seconds later, there was shuffling on the line. Then, a weak, trembling voice came through the phone. "Daddy. Daddy, please help me, they've chained me. I'm so scared." Before she could finish, the line cut off. Mr. Johnson gripped the phone tight, tears falling freely. His chest heaved with heavy breaths. Uncle Peter placed a hand on his shoulder, steadying him. "We'll find the rest of the money," Peter whispered. "Even if we have to sell everything." Mr. Johnson nodded firmly. "I will not bury my child. Not while I'm still breathing." Meanwhile, in Abuja, Daniel sat alone in his small room beside Amelia's prison. He stared at a worn-out photo of his mother, a woman he had promised to take care of before crime swallowed him. His hands trembled. His head dropped into his palms. For the first time in a long time, he began to wonder if there was a way out. The clock ticked loudly in Mr. Johnson's living room. The weight of every second crushed his chest. It was the morning of the final day. The kidnappers had made one thing clear in their last call. "If the money is not with us by 6 p.m. today, forget your daughter forever." Mr. Johnson sat by the table with his bank manager on the phone. "I want to transfer 25 million Nigerian nairas to this account," he said, voice firm but shaky. His hand held a piece of paper tightly, the account number Daniel had given him. The manager paused. "Sir, are you sure? Once this money leaves, there's no way to recover it." Mr. Johnson closed his eyes. Amelia's frightened voice echoed in his mind. "I'm sure." 3 hours later, Daniel's phone vibrated sharply. A bank alert popped on the screen. 25 million Nigerian nairas credited. His heart skipped. He stared at the message for a long moment. This was it. The deal was complete. Vincent walked into the room, eyes sharp. "Is the money in?" Daniel nodded slowly. Vincent's lips curled into a sly smile. "Good. Clean job. Now we can move." Daniel swallowed hard. He turned toward the dark room where Amelia sat today. Chained. Tired. Broken. "She's suffered enough," Daniel muttered. Vincent shrugged carelessly. "As long as we're paid, let her go." Later that night, a black-tinted car cruised down a quiet road in Abuja, headlights dimmed. It stopped near a lonely park. Inside, Daniel gently helped Amelia step out. Her steps were weak. Her wrists bruised. But her eyes, they still burned with hope. Daniel unlocked the metal cuff on her ankle. For a long moment, their eyes met. He said nothing. She said nothing. He handed her a small envelope. Inside was 5,000 Nigerian nairas, just enough to take a cab to the nearest police station. Without a word, Daniel stepped back into the car. Moments later, the car disappeared into the darkness, leaving Amelia standing alone under the moonlight. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She was free. 2 days later, in Lagos, the front door burst open. Mr. Johnson and Evelyn rushed out as a battered taxi parked in front of their compound. The car door swung open. And there she was. Amelia. Her mother let out a loud cry and fell to her knees. Mr. Johnson sprinted forward, wrapping Amelia tightly in his arms. Tears flowed from everyone's eyes. My baby, you're home," Evelyn wept, kissing Amelia's forehead over and over. Mr. Johnson pulled back slightly, his face wet with tears. "We never stopped fighting. We never gave up on you." Amelia sobbed, holding her father's shoulders tightly. I knew you'd come for me. I'm grateful, Dad, I'm grateful, Mum, and I'm so sorry for insisting." They stayed there on the front porch, under the soft glow of evening light, their hearts heavy but whole. Daniel and his gang disappeared from Abuja shortly after. Police investigations began, but the trail ran cold. Amelia, after months of therapy and healing, slowly returned to life. She later opened a foundation for kidnapped victims, dedicating her life to helping others survive what she did. Her story, once full of pain, became a light of hope for many. And Mr. Johnson? He never stopped saying the same words to parents he met. Even in the darkest night, don't stop fighting for your child. They are worth everything. Thank you for watching this powerful true life story. Amelia's journey reminds us that we must always be careful of the people we trust, even those who seem kind at first. Be careful of strangers and fast friendships. People who seem perfect at first may have dangerous secrets. Never ignore the warning signs. If someone rushes you or asks you to travel alone, think twice. It also shows us the deep love of a parent and how far they will go to save their child. If you enjoyed this story and learned something from it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real stories like this. See you in the next video.